here we are with a bit of a video. This video is on Oak Island. The following information is what I can find online. I am sorry if there are errors, but there's a lot of stories, and some are fact and some are fiction. It is hard to know exactly what is the truth and what is not, especially after all these years. Well, what is Oak Island? Oak Island is a 57 hectare or 140 acre privately owned island in the Lunenburg County on the south shore of Nova Scotia, Canada. It is a tree-covered island and is one of about 360 small islands in the Mahone Bay, and rises to a maximum of about 11 meters or 36 feet above sea level. The island is located 200 meters or 660 feet from shore and is connected to the mainland by a causeway. The island is best known for the various theories about possible treasure or historical artifacts and the associated goings-on and exploration of said island. Well, one of the myths of this here island is a ghost messing with metal detectors and equipment preventing searchers from searching. Many believe that there is a great treasure buried here. However, there is not a lot of factual documents to say for sure. Well, what is this curse that everybody speaks of? Well, a curse that claims that 7 searchers must die for the treasure to be found. There have been 6 that have died so far over the years trying to excavate the island. Well, what is thought to have been buried there? There have been stories over the years of pirates visiting the island, burying their treasure there. The Knights Templar burying the Ark of the Covenant, or perhaps the Holy Grail, or other religious artifacts. Some say Christopher Columbus may have brought the Templars to the island. The crown jewels of Mary Antoinette, proof that Francis Bacon wrote Shakespeare's plays after all. There could be tons of gold. The theories are plentiful, but there has been nothing really documented recovered of significant value over the years. Well, who has dug there? It is said in 1795 Daniel McGinnis was over on the island when he came across a curious circular depression in the ground. Standing over this depression was a tree whose branches had been cut away, and there was marks in the tree that looked like it may have been used as a pulley. Of course, like all younger children, having heard tales of pirates in the area, he decided to return home to get his friends and come back later to, well, have a look at what's going on. Over the next several days, McGinnis, along with his friends John Smith and Anthony Vaughan, worked digging out the hole, and what they found astonished them. 2 feet below the surface, they came across a layer of flagstones covering the pit. At 10 feet down, they ran into a layer of oak logs spanning across the pit. Again at 20 feet, they found a layer of logs, and then once again at 30, they found another layer. Not being able to continue alone from here, they went home, but of course with plans of returning to search some more. Well, it took the 3 discoverers 8 years, but they did return, along with a bit of help from the Onslow Company. They formed this company for the purpose of searching. They began digging. They quickly got back to the 30-foot point that had been reached, 8 years earlier. They continued down to 90 feet, finding a layer of oak logs at every 10-foot interval. Besides the boards at 40 feet, they found a layer of charcoal kind of odd. At 50 feet, they found a layer of putty material, and at 60 feet, a layer of coconut fiber. Now, here's the first mystery. At 90 feet, one of the most puzzling clues was found. There's a stone that is carved with some mysterious writings that still nobody to this day can say for certain what was really carved on it. Well, they removed the stone out of the pit, brought it up to the surface, and then continued digging. Well, after pulling up the layer of oak logs at 90 feet, water began to seep into the pit, and by the next day the pit was filled up with water to the 33-foot level. Pumping the water out didn't work. They were pretty much at a standstill. So over the next year, a new pit was dug parallel to the original down to a 100-foot mark. From there, a tunnel was run over to the money pit, but again, water flooded in, and the search was abandoned for 45 years. Well, another attempt was carried out in 1861 by a new company, the Oak Island Association. Instead of digging deeper into the now flooded original shaft, they drilled a side shaft to avoid the water. During the excavation of the new shaft, the bottom of the original shaft had collapsed. Of course, there was speculation that it had fallen into a deeper void. The pit may have been booby-trapped to protect the treasure itself. Or perhaps they hit one of the flood tunnels. During further excavation, a man was killed when the boiler of a pump engine burst. Of course, the company abandoned their efforts when the money ran out in 1864. Henry L. Bowden arrived on Oak Island in August of 1909, representing the Old Gold Salvage Group, and one of those members was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Well, the money pit, as it has now gained, notoriety, was cleared out to 113 feet. Although multiple core samples were taken around the pit just to see, nothing really revealed anything of interest. At this time, there were searches of Smith's Cove, where the drain tunnels were said to have been. Well, they found a ring bolt in a rock that had reportedly been seen. They also found remains of cofferdam built around 1850. No evidence of anything else was really said to have been found. The group left the island in November of 1909, but Roosevelt kept up with the Oak Island news and developments for most of the rest of his life. It is said that there are documents in the presidential vault still to this day about Oak Island. Well, the next searcher along came in 1928 by the name of William Chappell. He became interested in excavating the pit. He started along in 1931 by sinking a 12 by 24 foot wide and 163 foot deep shaft, what he believes southwest of the site of the 1897 shaft, which was near the original pit. At about 127 feet, a number of artifacts said to have been found, including an axe, a fluke anchor, a pick. The pick was identified as a Cornish miner's pick, but by this time the area around the pit was littered with debris from previous searches. Gilbert Hidden, an operator of a steel fabricating company, saw the 1928 news article and was fascinated by the engineering problems involved in recovering the reported treasure. Hidden made 6 trips to Oak Island, collecting books, artifacts, and everything he could find for information on the island. Well, in the summer of 1935, Hidden, after he purchased the southeastern end of the island, in 1935, he informed King George VI about his developments on the island. Further excavations were made in 1935 and 1936. However, none were successful. In 1959, Robert Restall and his 18-year-old son came to Oak Island after signing a contract with one of the property owners. In 1965, they tried to seal off what they thought may be storm drains or flood tunnels in Smith Cove. They dug down a shaft to 27 feet. However, on August 17th, Restall was overcome by hydrogen sulfide fumes. His son went in the shaft to rescue him, and he lost consciousness. Carl Grasser and 2 other workers were killed in the attempt to rescue and save the 2 men. A visitor to the site, Edward White, had himself lowered on a rope into the shaft, but was able to bring out only one of the men. Restall and his son, Grasser and Hiltz, all died. This tragedy is the worst one to date on the island. Later that year, Robert Dunfield leased portions of the island. The Dunfield dug the pit area to a depth of 134 feet and a width of 100 feet using a 70-ton digger, a big crane with a clam bucket. Transportation of the crane to the island required construction of a causeway, which still exists today. From the western end of the island to Crandall's Point, which is on the mainland of Nova Scotia. 200 meters away, the Dunfields' lease ended in August 1966. I know all the searchers have damaged the island in some way over the years in their narrow-minded search for the treasure, but in my opinion, Dunfield's search attempts left permanent scars on the island in ways that'll never be repaired, and the scars are there today. The next group to have their chance on the island was called the Triton Alliance. In January 1966, Dan Blankenship and David Tobias, as well as Robert Dunfield and Fred Nolan, formed a syndicate for exploration on Oak Island. 2 years later, Blankenship and Tobias formed Triton Alliance after purchasing most of the island. Several former landowners, including Mel Chappell, became shareholders in Triton Alliance. Triton workers excavated a 230-foot shaft, known as Borehole 10X, and supported by a steel caisson to bedrock. They completed the shaft in 1971. 10X is still there and open to this day. According to Blankenship and Tobias, cameras were lowered down the shaft into a opening or a cave, recorded possible chests, human remains, wooden cribbing, and tools. However, because of the time, the technology and such, the images were unclear. None of the claims have been able to be confirmed even till this day. The shaft later collapsed, and the excavation was abandoned, and the shaft was later redug to 181 feet, lined with train cars like oil tankers down to the bedrock. But work was halted due to lack of funds and the collapse of the partnership. In 2016, there were divers that were sent down to the bottom of 10X. However, there's been no artifacts recovered, and the mystery still continues. In 1983, Triton Alliance sued Fred Nolan over the ownership of several lots on the island, and of course the access to the causeway. 2 years later, Nolan's ownership of the lots was confirmed. He was ordered to pay for damages for interfering with the tourist business. During the 1990s, further exploration stalled because of legal battles between the Triton partners and lack of financing. Well, in 2005, a portion of the island was for sale. It was said to be around $7 million. Although the Oak Island Tourism Society had hoped the government of Canada would purchase the island and kind of make it a tourist area, a group of American drillers did so instead. Well, it was announced in 2006 that brothers Rick and Marty Lagina of Michigan had purchased 50% of the Oak Island tours from David Tobias for an undisclosed sum. The rest of the company is owned by Blankenship, in conjunction with a few others. The members of the Michigan group had purchased Lot 25 from David Tobias for a reported $230,000. 1 year before Tobias sold the rest of his shares to the Michigan group. The Michigan group, working with Blankenship, said that it would resume operations on Oak Island in the hope of discovering buried treasure and solving the island mystery. In July 2010, Blankenship and the other stakeholders in Oak Island Tours announced their website that the Nova Scotian Department of Resources, essentially the Nova Scotian government, had granted them a treasure trove license which allowed them to resume activities on the island until December 31st, 2010. After that, the departments reappealed the treasure trove license and replaced it with the Oak Island Treasures Act. The act became effective on January 1st, 2011. It allows treasure hunting to explore on the island under the terms of license issued by the Minister of Natural Resources. Exploration by the Lagina brothers has been documented in a reality television show now airing on the History Channel starting in 2014 and is still running currently to this day, 2018. With our modern technology and equipment, I believe this group can get to the bottom of the mystery if given the chance to. Well, a little bit of fact here. The money pit is over 300 years old. The island has claimed 6 lives to date as of 2018. The money pit is said to be around 200 feet into the ground. Some say the money pit is just a natural sinkhole with things that have been thrown in there over time. Some of the artifacts that have been recovered are dated to be about 300 years old. They have recovered human bones from 2 people. Now, I cannot find any proof, but I can venture a guess that there probably have been multiple millions of dollars spent searching for treasure. Some people say it could be as high as $100 million given inflation over time. You know, they have been digging there for decades, hundreds of years, and all the labor and equipment does not come cheap, especially in the past 10 years. Don't forget the cost to buy the lots they are digging on and other expenses that the searchers have to put out. What has been found to date? Well, to keep the story short, nothing has really been found to date. Nothing has really been said and documented on what they have found in terms of treasure. There have been hearsays and rumors, and a lot more questions found than answered. There are odd findings below ground that should not be there, that are not natural formations, and in the recent years there has been pottery, bone fragments, leather found. There has been more things found on the surface than what there has been buried below the surface. Is there a conspiracy? No, I'm not talking about aliens or men in black or even, the mystery curse. But is there a force at play, whether it's people we see on TV or maybe a group behind the curtain calling the shots? Some of the choices that they have made over the last 5 seasons of the TV show have not been the wisest. Not to mention some of the choices in the past that were made that wrecked the face of the island and quite possibly damaging any clues to solve the mystery of what Oak Island really is. Well, my thoughts on Oak Island. I would love to say that they should keep digging and that they are going to be rewarded for their efforts. But after all this time, if there was a treasure on the island, I believe it's long gone. I think it was recovered in the early days in the original diggings. If not, then it was elsewhere on the island in a shallower spot and somebody else found it. Why would anybody go through that much trouble and risk to dig 200 feet down to make a booby-trapped money pit tunnel system just to hide treasure in? To risk the collapse or losing the treasure would be too great. What if they buried it so deep because it is not meant to be found? What if it's a dangerous item, weapon, or something that could destroy mankind? Why is it so deep and hard to retrieve? Ask yourself that question. Would you bury treasure? And how deep would you bury it? I know that I would not bury mine 200 feet deep. The risk is too great on not being able to get that back. Now, once again, there may be some inaccuracies in this here video, but this is some of the stuff that I can find online. There are lots of stories, lots of different theories. This is basically stating fact, who dug here, what's been recovered, documented proof of all that other stuff. Now I would like to do another video later on in the Oak Island Theory chain of videos. This one might delve a little deeper into off the deep end. However, there are some really good points in the video that I'm wanting to make in the future. But thanks again for coming along on this here video journey. What are your thoughts?